You are listening to Resilient Life, the podcast where we explore the power of resiliency. I'm Nikita Ross. It is my hope that listening to this podcast will give you the tools to connect with and increase your resiliency. So join me on this adventure of self-discovery and self-love. Welcome to Resilient Life, the podcast where we explore the power of resiliency. I'm so excited about this week's guests. Maya, will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your chosen career?
Hello, my name is Maya, and my chosen career is I work for Lockheed Martin as of right now as an engineer specialist aide.
I would love to hear you define resilience.
I think for me, resilience means your ability to overcome traumas in your life. Resiliency means to be strong, to just make it every day, and to be happy with who you are.
I like that. That's a really good definition. The being happy with who you are. I haven't heard that in the definitions, and I really like that. I may incorporate that into my definition of resilience. With that definition that you just gave us, do you consider yourself to be resilient?
That is an awesome question. One that I've been working on. I did not used to feel like I was resilient. I actually felt like I was the opposite, that I was kind of like letting my traumas take hold of me, but I'm starting to feel more resilient. I'm starting to understand that just because I'm not doing everything perfectly and like I'm not happy every day, I'm still resilient. So I do feel now that I am resilient.
I love that. You touched on some very important points about the construct or the subject of resiliency. There is a misconception that if you're resilient, that means that one, your life is perfect, which no one has a perfect life,
Right.
or that you're always happy. That also is not what resilience means. If we think back to that definition that you gave us of like just overcoming and being happy with yourself. And so being happy with yourself is like contentment. It's not necessarily jovialness constantly, if that makes sense. And so I love that you were able to do that self-searching and then identify and connect with your resiliency. I love it. What advice would you have for people who haven't gotten there yet, who haven't necessarily connected with their resiliency or don't know how to? What advice would you have with the information of saying how you're learning to do that?
This is something I struggle with because I didn't feel as if I had any credibility to give advice. So I'm still actually struggling with that. I would tell them as much of my story as I'm comfortable with and let them know that I was also feeling like I was not resilient. But just getting out of bed every day, just trying to be the best you can be. Even if you're like, today I'm going to smile at 5 different people, or today I'm going to find something beautiful that I want to do that makes me happy. I would tell them that can be resilient, and that shows that they are resilient.
That is absolutely perfect. Maya, you're just like touching on all these pivotal points about the concept of resiliency. The other misconception is that it has to be big and grand when you're resilient, right? And so I love that you touched on it's in those small things, getting out of bed in the morning, saying something kind to yourself. And I know you didn't say that, but I want to add that in. Smiling at, as you said, 5 people. These little things do make a huge impact. And I know that may sound very cliche, but it's so true. It's so accurate. It's like baby steps. If I were to, if I were listening to this podcast for the first time and you gave those nuggets that you just dropped now, that would help me have a more realistic approach to increasing my resiliency, because I would say, oh, it's little things, getting out of bed, smiling, finding things that make me happy. What is something that makes you happy, Maya?
You are touching on some really deep questions. Because in this journey I'm trying to take to be more positive and resilient, I realized that I don't know.
Hmm.
I realized that I was not happy for a long time. So I didn't know what makes me happy because I realized like I haven't felt happy. So in discovering who I am, right now I think what makes me happy is my dog, my my relationship with my mom and my sister, just family time that makes me really happy. Going to the movies, that has been consistent in my life. I actually got that from my mother. That makes me really happy. But reading, that also makes me very happy. But I'm discovering things every day that make me happy, and I'm trying to find things that make me happy. So I'm still trying to find my hobbies. Painting is something that I've discovered. So I think that also makes me happy. So a few things, but I'm hoping to find as time goes by and as I try to work on myself more, I'm trying to find more things that make me happy.
Thank you. That was a very vulnerable and relatable share, because one, you said, I'm not sure what makes me happy. And I cannot tell you the number of people who are in the same boat. I don't know yet. But you also started to think about it, which lets people know that they can explore different things to figure out what makes them happy. That's a perfect response. What is the healthiest thing you've done for yourself?
That's a really good question. The healthiest thing I've done for myself, I actually have a few healthy things. If you don't mind, I'm not just going to say one because I feel like they all build off each other. One of the healthiest things I've done for myself is to move from a state that I was very unhappy in, to move to a state that I feel really happy in. So me moving, that was one
So,
of
like a physical state,
a
not a state of
physical
mind.
a physical
Okay.
state in the United States. To move from New York to Texas, that was a very, very big thing that I needed to do to be healthy for me. Um, the second thing was to get out of the military. I, though I do not regret anything in my life, I could not continue on the military journey. That was not what I should have been doing. And the third thing is to take a second and try to get off of autopilot. I realized I was constantly going through the motions of my life, and I don't feel like I had anything to show forward. I don't feel like I remember it. I don't feel like I truly was living. Like I felt like I was just going through the motions. There wasn't ever a stop for me, and I just couldn't see the beauty in anything, and there was just no happiness. I just was every day just, this is the schedule, but not being present in life. So to try to get off of autopilot was probably the healthiest thing I've done for me.
I am just speechless at the self reflection of that answer you just gave, or the self reflection in that answer you gave. What I hear is that you focus on the things that you could control because there are things that are out of our control. You focus on what you could and you made those changes. How did you know? Because the benefit of autopilot is we're there and we're kind of checked out a little bit. How did you, within your level of comfort of sharing, how did you know? And any practical steps um, that you took to get out of autopilot, even if you're not fully out yet, you at least acknowledged it. And it sounds like you said you have taken some steps to start getting out of autopilot. Will you tell us about it?
I can't take all the credit, even though if you know my personality, you know I try to. Um, I would say you, as my mom, actually told me. I did not realize
Mm,
that I was in autopilot. I didn't even know what that meant until we had a serious talk about autopilot in general. I heard you say it. I've heard you say, "Hey, are you going off autopilot?" just as like a check-in, normal situation, but hearing what it was through someone else, seeing someone else do it, and then that really touched me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing the exact same thing. And that's when I realized I was on autopilot.
I wanted to just clarify a little bit because you and I keep using the term autopilot. And you grew up with your mom, me, who has my background in social work and psychology, and I've been in the behavioral health field and I've been studying resiliency. And so the term makes sense to us. But for someone listening who's not heard that term, I'm on autopilot. Would you describe it as just like going through the motions of life, but not fully present? And I want to try to use a word besides present, but not fully here. How would
Right.
you describe autopilot?
Basically, how I would describe autopilot, I think, would be lack of awareness about life, what's going on in life. I would describe it as not feeling happy, um, and now going through the motions, basically clocking in. I would describe it as like an office job. You clock
Mm,
in, you do the time, and you leave.
wow. Wow.
That's what I would describe autopilot as. There, you know, you're doing this specific job. You're doing it because that's what you're told to do. That's you're told to live like this, so you're just doing it. There is no thought behind it. There's no emotions behind it. You're just punching in and punching out at the end of the day. There's no
Yeah.
happiness. There's nothing behind it. This is just what you're doing every single day. And then you look back and you're like, what do I have to show for it? And I think that's what autopilot is.
That makes sense. And when you say doing a job, that job is living life. So you wake up in the morning, that's when you clock in.
Right.
And then when you go to sleep at night, that's when you clock out. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. Yes.
And then throughout the day, you're just kind of like going through the motions of life and literally going to work or literally whatever it is, numbing behaviors, smoking, drinking, whatever, no judgment, no judgment. But whatever it is that we do to be able to make it through our day to day. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. And I realized that I thought at first I was not on autopilot because I had moments of happiness or what I thought was happiness. And what I thought was happiness was just me numbing life. And my number choice was drinking. So because I was drinking a lot and partying, I felt that I was happy and living my best life. When in fact, I was just doing a pattern that I always do every day and I didn't feel anything behind it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes we as humans, life can be hard first, let's start with that. Life can be very challenging at times. And I think sometimes as humans, we feel like we can't, or it's too difficult to face, deal with, address the things that happen to us, either in our childhood or any phase of our lives. And so sometimes we, without realizing it, fall into our autopilot methods and numbing methods because life just feels too difficult sometimes. And so we eat to numb. I'm bored. I'm horny. I'm lonely. I'll eat. I'm sad. I'll eat. We drink. Same reasons that I listed for eating or other substances. So we smoke. Again, no judgment. No judgment at all. Just the recognition of what do we want to do? How do we define true happiness? And what do we want to do to get there? And if it is doing those things that I mentioned, no judgment, live your best life. But if it's not, starting to identify what things you want to do to change, to start to get to the path of what happiness means to you. I can't define happiness for you. It's going to be different for each person. Do you agree with that, Maya?
I do agree. I used to think that I was happy because I was out and I was partying with my friends. And I came to the realization that I was not happy when no one could describe my personality without mentioning party girl Maya or drinking Maya. I realized that's not who I was. I'm not happy with that description, and I don't even know who I am without that. And now I'm realizing that I can be happy without drinking and that I can find hobbies that make me happy without it.
Will you tell us, how do you celebrate yourself?
That is a great question. I feel like this actually goes with another one of your questions, which is what makes you happy? Because to celebrate myself, I have to figure out what makes me happy to because whatever makes me happy, I can celebrate, I can use that to celebrate. I'm still learning how to celebrate myself because I don't fully know what makes me happy.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah, that
now,
makes sense.
to celebrate myself, I think the first thing I think of is getting my nails done, getting a massage, a relaxation, or traveling. I think traveling or smaller things to celebrate myself would be going on a date or going to a restaurant as a little celebration. But I haven't fully figured out how to celebrate myself yet because I don't fully know what makes me happy.
Yeah. And I think that everything you said is completely normal. We're not taught growing up from our parents. I didn't teach you that. I didn't say, hey, Maya, here's how you celebrate yourself. Hey, Maya, let's figure out what's going to bring you joy. School doesn't teach us that. Society doesn't really tell us how to do that. And so I think it's normal for us to sometimes struggle with one, figuring out what makes us happy and then how to celebrate ourselves because those things aren't really taught or shown. And then I also think that changes throughout our lives at different phases of our lives. So the things that used to bring us joy when we were younger may not bring us joy in our 20s. It may change in our 30s and so on and so forth. In the same way we celebrate ourselves, I may celebrate myself by chasing butterflies in one phase of my life, and then learning to cook or cooking myself a fantastic meal. So I think the question is not to get us to feel badly about not knowing, but to inspire us to start thinking about exploring ways to celebrate ourselves because it's so important that we do that.
I
So
love
thank
that.
you for that response.
Thank you.
If you were to take a moment and think about the theme song or a song that resonates with you, your life, what would it be? A song that you could sing, look in the mirror, and it would just make you smile, make you feel good about yourself. What song is that?
I actually know my theme song of life, and it's Try by Pink. And the point of this song is you just have to get up and try. Like, you can try new things, just try to be happy for a day, just try at life. And I think that's the most beautiful song, and that really touches me every time I hear it. And I usually play it in the morning. So that would be my theme song.
I love that. You have this, if I were to sum up based off of the answers you're giving, you have this approach of just really easy, really realistic. I'm going to try. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work on it. I'm not going to give up. It's very inspiring to hear your responses. So I love, and it could be a millennial thing. I have no idea, but I love this like very practical, realistic approach that you're giving forth. You're just like, hey, I don't know. I'm going to try. I'm not going to give up. It's even like your choice in songs. It's like, don't give up. Keep trying. Try again. Try again. I love it. I think that's awesome. There is a song, speaking of Pink, her other one, Effing Perfect. It's not necessarily my theme song, but it is a song that if I'm feeling low, if I need a pick me up, I blast it in the car and scream it to the top of my lungs. So, not that Pink will ever listen, but if you do, thank you for making songs that uplift us.
She might, you never know.
You never know. So, thank you, Pink, for making songs that help us keep going. I really appreciate that. What are you most proud of, Maya?
My mom.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that answer. Okay.
When I think of what makes me proud every day and what makes me want to be practical and try is my mom. No one gave you the rule book. I'm not going to go on your story, but where you are now, I don't think anybody would know where you came from if you didn't tell.
Mm,
According to
thank you,
life,
baby.
you probably shouldn't be here or in your position with what you've had to deal with. So if you can
Thank
do
you.
that and be that positive and be where you are, you are such a role model for me. And like, I don't know, I'm just really proud of you.
Thank
You're just
you. I would attribute my resiliency to uh, lots of therapy. I always say that lots and lots of therapy. And I would attribute my resiliency back to you, Maya. I am honest enough to say I had you pretty young. I had no idea what I was. I was 18. I was a child raising a child. I made lots of mistakes. As I started to see you develop as your own human and how my choices as in parenting impacted you, it made me want to be better, not just for me, but also for you and for your sister. You deserved a, a parent who treated you kindly, listened to you, validated you, supported you, encouraged you, challenged you to be your best. I mean, your sister as well. And so I would contribute you to having you, my beautiful daughter, to me being resilient as well. So thank you. I want anyone hearing this podcast to know that you are also resilient. And you may say, how do I know that? I never met you. I've never seen you, but I know because you're here. Like Maya said, you got out of bed today. And even if you're listening to the podcast in bed, you're going to get out of bed at some point to go to the bathroom, to get something to drink, or to eat. You are resilient because you have made it through 100% of the challenges you have faced this far. And as you continue on and get more tools and increase your resiliency, you will continue to overcome all of the challenges, tests that happen to us throughout life. Because if one thing is promised in life, there will be trials and tribulations, to quote the Bible. Maya, I have one last question for you. Have you forgiven yourself for your past mistakes?
I thought that I had because I believe that I don't regret anything. I truly, you know, I grew up this way. I don't feel like I regret things because there's no use of going backwards. We're already here now, and what happened happened. So I don't feel regret for things. So I thought that meant that I forgive myself for mistakes, but I realize that there are things that I do not forgive myself for. Just because I don't regret it doesn't mean that I forgive myself.
Wow. Wow. And I know I said that question was the last question. So we're going to call that last question A. And this is last question B. It's just a follow up to that. Do you think it's important that we work on, and it's okay if you don't, but do you feel like it's important that we as humans work on forgiving ourselves?
Yes. Yes, I feel like that is one of the most important things because I can hold a grudge. Like I think about things that people do to me. Sometimes I feel like people do things to me and I felt personally offended and I would get angry and I would get upset and I would get out of control or feel like they betrayed me. And I feel like it's if I can't forgive people, if I can't forgive myself, how can I forgive people? And realize that
Mm,
these things aren't being done to me and just recognizing that people are just doing things. They're not intentionally trying to hurt me, but I realize that that stems from me. I'm having a hard time forgiving myself for things that I've done. So how can I give you any grace if I don't give myself grace? So
yeah.
I think it is so important to learn how to forgive yourself because it helps you, first of all, be a better person for yourself. If I forgave myself, I could be happier. I can feel like I deserve these things. And I feel like a part of me, if I don't forgive myself, sometimes I feel like I don't deserve certain things or I shouldn't be in certain situations or I'm not good enough because I'm so down on myself. So I think forgiving yourself is so big just for your own happiness and your own growth, but also I don't want to be a negative effect on people who do small things on accident. I don't want to tarnish relationships for a small petty grudge, but I understand that I'm having a hard time with forgiveness within, so I can't give it outside either.
Wow. That was heart wrenching. I think you touched on two potent things. One, how important it is to forgive ourselves so that we can then forgive others. And that allows us to be happy and healthier because when we're not forgiving people, we're holding a grudge, and to hold a grudge takes energy and unhappiness because I'm mad at you, I'm mad at myself, I feel shame for myself. And that's not something that happens overnight. You don't just wake up one morning and say, I forgive myself for that time I stepped on that ant or whatever we're forgiving ourselves for. It takes consistent work intentional work when it comes up, right? When those thoughts come up of, remember that time you stepped on that ant? And it's like, I do. And I forgive myself. Like, it's going to take a lot of work. It's not something that happens magically. And I want anyone out there working on learning to forgive themselves to know that it does not happen instantly. It's something that is going to take lots of intentional work. And then the second thing you touched on, Maya, was when you said, when you forgive yourself, you allow forgiveness for others. What I think about is earlier in our conversation when you talked about autopilot, when we get into that place of like forgiveness and back to you saying that you just want to be happy and whatever happiness means for you, we do recognize that when people, sometimes harm is caused unintentionally because people are still on autopilot. And then we learn not to take things personally, other people's words, actions, behaviors personally, because we recognize that they are on autopilot. And we remember when we were on autopilot and think about any harm or that we may have caused, and we forgive ourselves for that. And so it allows us to forgive others. I think that is a phenomenal process that it's not easy. I don't think it's easy. Maya, do you think it's easy work? Or do you think
No,
it's,
I'm still
yeah,
trying. Like, I'm
yeah,
trying every day.
yeah. I actually am still working on that as well. I think if I went up to strangers and said, hey, have you forgiven yourself for everything? I think it would be very rare that we have people to say, yes, I'm totally forgiving myself for everything. And so I think that is a work in progress for a lot of us. I just want us not to give up or get discouraged if we're not moving as fast as we think we should be. But the fact that we're acknowledging it, the fact that we want to, and the fact that we're making baby steps, we should be really, really proud of ourselves. I'm very proud of you. I want to thank you for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast and be as vulnerable as you are today and sharing things about your life, our relationship, that will help other people who are struggling to connect with or haven't yet connected with their resiliency. So thank you. Do you have any last parting words?
I want to say thank you for having me. I think this is a very beautiful podcast. I think that you're going to touch more people than you realize. And I really do think this is your calling.
I love it. Thank you, Maya. That concludes this episode of Resilient Life, the podcast where we explore the power of resiliency. I hope this episode gave you some tools to connect with and increase your resiliency. I'm proud of you. Let's keep up the momentum. Follow Resilient Life on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube at Resilient Life Podcast. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.